Welcome to this edition of Theological Journals. 2:05 p.m. on the 15th of July. If the Lord be for us, who can be against us? And now with Anglican Journal, AC aims to kickstart fund for retired northern clergy. Focus to be on unpaid and indigenous priests by Matthew Pridster. The Anglican Church Women, ACW, of the Diocese of New Westminster in Southwest BC have provided a gift of $100,000 to assist retired clergy with housing in the Council of North Diocese. The diocese's ACW has given the money to the Anglican Foundation of Canada and explains the emphasis on helping indigenous and non-stipendiary retired clergy. It also has challenged other ACWs across Canada to donate what they can to increase the fund. Gail Revitt, president of the ACW in the Diocese of New Westminster. Give me a second here. This is the Anglican Journal. Updates on what are going on in the Anglican Church of Canada. We thought that if it's having some problems, and probably so are others in the Council of the North, especially those who are non-stipendiary and who've been living in church rectories. What do they do after they decide to retire? We'll pick that up again as we turn to Trinity Theological Journal on Philip Durston's article on the Israelite calendar. Other logic in biblical nomenclature has been overlooked and suggests that the Hebrews understood the beginning and midpoint of the year. In Exodus 23:16, we're told that the Feast of Ingathering is at the going out of the year, Pitseat. This answers to the phrase invariably used for the time of the spring feast and for when kings go to war, the return of the year, a time which brings back to the month ahead, Aviv. Philo's emphases on equinoxes and the equinoctial signs that govern the two main festivals of Judaism indicates the latter were never intended to stray more than one sidereal month beyond the respective equinoxes. The Passover should not occur prior to the equinox, as stipulated by Rosh Hash 21a. Frothingham, based on Philo and many Jewish sources, confidently concluded there can be no doubt that the theoretically correct date for Nisan 14 had been within 29 or 30 days of the spring equinox from a remote antiquity, with perhaps a latitude of a few days on either side of the equinox. This rule of the equinox appears to have been operative in AD 37. Tiberius Caesar died on March 16, as is known from classical sources. News of his death reached the governor of Syria, Vitellius, in Jerusalem on the fourth day of Passover that year. Since we are certain this news took over a month to reach Jerusalem, the Passover could not have occurred on March 21 that year. Clearly, Nisan 14 fell on April 19. As March 21 is only 2 days before the equinox, the Sanhedrin at this time may have avoided violating the rule of the equinox. It's a wonky article. And now for Anglican and Episcopal History and the Lambeth Conferences. This first one on historiographies. Almost all subsequent historiography has either included this quote or alluded to it, and such repetition would seem to indicate both historiographical and perhaps ecclesiological consensus. Few publications offer a dissenting view, but in fact, the portrait that emerges from Davidson's two compilations reveal confused authority structures, a more contested role for the Archbishop of Canterbury, and diverse estimations of what an Anglican Episcopal gathering could be and should be. The 1889 volume contains multiple references to the Canadian request for a general council for the Anglican Communion, and still more references to ecumenical councils and the role they played in church history. This is from Davidson's Lambeth Conferences, 1867 to 1888. Readers of Davidson's earliest edited volumes could see that Longley sympathized with the Canadian request, that other bishops hoped that such a council would emerge. Readers could also see that due to the civil law, Longley could not assent to the Canadian proposal, a fact recognized by the committees in question. The second article on Lambeth Conferences and Michael Ramsey. The Second Vatican Council also admitted observers merely one startling aspect of a startling event. Two of the Anglican observers in Rome were also at Lambeth 1968. One of them, the American but British-based theologian Howard Root, had found the experience in Rome life-changing. The isolation of the centuries has been broken down forever. In its place has come a new sense of responsibility, founded upon the solid ground of personal friendships, theological discussion, and the conviction that we all belong to one Christian family with common problems and common aims. The change of mood was indicated by the presence of several Roman Catholic observers in 1968, which would have been hard to imagine a decade later. Among them were men with whom Ramsey was in regular contact, most notably Jean Villebrands, 1909 to 206, the secretary of the Vatican Secretariat for the Promotion of Unity among Christians, who had been a regular visitor at Lambeth Palace. Villebrands read aloud a message from Pope Paul VI in the opening session. A further and unexpected indication of a new openness was the relationship with the media. Ramsey himself gave two press conferences, one at each end of the Lambeth Conference, as well as a sherry party. Ralph Dean made himself available in a similar way. Additionally, reporters, but not broadcasters, were allowed into the plenary sessions of the conference itself. It was to this change in policy that the whole historian owes the detailed account of the 1968 conference by two American journalists, James B. Simpson and Edward Story. Ramsey's relationship with the media was complex and so far much underexplored by historians. And the public relations operation of the Church of England was in a state of some flux. He had not relished the crowd of hangers-on that he encountered at Evanston in 1954, nor the kind of media boosterism that accompanied it. But though Ramsey did not quite delight in the presence of the media, the kind of secrecy of earlier Lambeth conferences could not be maintained. The privacy of the ecclesiastical gatherings had rather become a thing of the past, Ramsey told a television interviewer as the conference began. The precedent had been set by the Vatican Council in its invitation to observers. This way the privacy goes, and if it goes, it had better go together. The third article, Lambeth Conference on International Relations. It was the achievement of the Kellogg Brand Pact of 1928 that appeared to many church people as an immense step forward in international morality, for in its multilateral renunciation of war as an instrument of national policy, it vowed that all disputes should be resolved only by pacific means. In this, the ambitions of the diplomats now harmonized with the principles of Christian opinion. Bell drafted a resolution on international arbitration to the Stockholm Continuation Committee at Eisenach in September 1929. It's welcomed and endorsed the Kellogg Brand Pact, reaffirmed the Stockholm Resolution, looked to revising existing treatises through arbitration, and finally